What's up, people? Welcome back to the Performance Playbook podcast. Today, we have the one and only, tell me if I'm wrong, it's Alexis Landot.
Yes, nice accent.
Merci.
Very nice. Where are you from? You're from England, right?
No, I'm from California,
California.
USA.
Okay.
Yeah. I took a couple years of French in high school, but thanks to traveling to like Montreal and, diving has been able to connect me with French, which I'm a big fan of. Not great, but I would actually love to stay connected and actually learn how to speak a little bit more fluently. But enough about me. Could you give us just a light intro of who you are, just so the viewers know what we're working with?
Well, thanks for this introduction. My name is Alexis Landot, as you said. I'm a French climber / urban climber. I've been climbing free solo a few buildings, a few skyscrapers, that's what I do. I climb skyscrapers free solo, meaning I start from the bottom and I climb on the outside and reach the top. Because I know urban climbing can be really confusing, because urban climbing is a word that is used for anything urban related nowadays. But yeah, I sometimes I don't really consider what I do free solo, since it's really different from rock climbing. But yeah, I would call it urban free solo.
Yeah. I think the interesting part for me is when I first started watching your content, I thought of Alex Honnold in that same connection of like he free solos, outdoor rock and stuff like that, but then you're just like scaling full-blown buildings. Have you heard that comparison quite often?
Yeah, of course. Well, Alex Honnold in the free solo world he's often considered as the GOAT, as the best. I would consider Alain Robert being the best, but I might be a little bit biased by the fact that Alain Robert, the French Spider-Man, of course, was my major inspiration as a kid to start urban climbing. But yeah, of course, Alex Honnold is always mentioned when it comes to free solo, especially for his ascent of freerider in El Capitan a few years ago, which was never done before.
Yeah. And so then you kind of bring up an interesting point. Like, so you looked up to climbers such as Alex and what was the name of your guys?
Alain Robert.
Okay. So with people like that, you're looking up to people that are consistently risking their lives. Some die, some are able to, achieve these great things. Do you ever feel like you kind of have that on your back? Like, hey, like I could have this title behind me.
I don't really think of it this way. I just do what I love to do, and I try to do it as good as possible. That's how I think of it. But I think even if I were to try to have an impact in, I don't know, like the climbing world, like years after I stopped climbing, it would be really hard to step in after Alain Robert, since he was crazy. But I'm saying this in a nice way, of course, but he really was, because he climbed on site some rock faces and some buildings that he wasn't even sure that he could finish them. He would just have no hesitation, like go to a rock wall and be like, yeah, I'm climbing that today, without even knowing if it's possible to top out the climb. So you have an amazing climber who's also crazy like that. So that's something that cannot be. It can be imitated, but it can never be replicated.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I'm not trying to be the new Alain Robert. I'm just trying to be myself. And my dream of climbing skyscraper was even in my mind as a kid, even before knowing who Alain Robert was. Alain Robert, the French Spider-Man. So yeah, I'm not trying to be like him, because I don't really see the point in trying to do that. But yeah, I'm just trying to have fun and do things I love in my life, you know.
Yeah.
But it's true that if I can have an impact, maybe later on after I stop climbing, it will definitely be something that would feel good. You know, I'm not gonna pretend that. How do you say in English? People who fake that they don't have an ego, you know. So I'm not like that. Of course, it would be nice for my ego if I learned that, I don't know, I've been inspiring for some people, but this is definitely not the primary goal.
Yeah, yeah, which is valid. I think that's an important part, is to like have that why behind what you're doing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
like
and the why is also not only could be explained by my quest of performance, but it can also be explained by my psychology and my you know I don't have the name in English, sorry. But when you have a self
self-image.
Yeah, like you I say in comment on dit, non, tu sais, non, que tu sais, une thérapie, mais genre pas une thérapie, mais tu réfléchis à qui tu es, toi. Une psychanalyse. Yeah, I don't know how to say the word in English, sorry. Sorry for the viewers that waited a long time for me to answer. Yeah, but when you think of who you are, self-analysis. Yes, self-analysis. Thank you. Self-analysis. So I think it's important, as you said, to have a lot of self-analysis in why you're doing that, but not only the why in the performance world, but the why as what's your psychology, who you are, and why you're doing what you do. And I did that, and I love to have control over my life, and I have a few like irrational fears, and I can see why I'm doing this nowadays, not only as a dream as a kid or for the performance, but also why it fits me on a psychological level.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like I feel the same way. So I'm a 10-meter diver. So I dive off of a platform. And so it's like having that, being able to analyze your brain and, you know, how you work is very important. Like I am terrified of 10-meter. I get afraid of it. But being able to conquer that fear is like the exciting part for me. Like the after is always like euphoric, because you're just like, dude, I was able to do this. I was able to achieve this, even though, you know, your brain is telling you otherwise.
Yeah, that's really hard to do when your brain is telling you to not do something, and you have to force yourself to not listen to your brain. It's really hard. It's the toughest part of what I do. Is just, it's not the climbing, it's the walking towards the building just before a climb, like forcing your body one step at a time to move towards your goal. But you know your goal is super dangerous, and you have to trick your brain into doing something it doesn't want to do. That's the hardest part, because when you start climbing, you don't have any other option to survive but to reach the top. So, I mean, your brain is teaming with you at this point, you know.
Yeah.
But when you have to start climbing, it's not the case. You have to force your brain to do something it doesn't want. So yeah, I definitely get what you mean.
So that's the interesting part, though, is like if you watch the film with Alex Honnold, they take a brain scan, and his amygdala is just, it doesn't fire properly. And I was gonna say, do you feel like you ever have that piece of like, maybe it just sounds like you're human too, but like he just isn't afraid of most things. It just doesn't do the same. Do you kind of feel that way sometimes?
I would say so. A lot of people mention this about the Alex Honnold movie. So I don't know Alex Honnold at all, but my guess is that there's maybe something wrong about this. So let me explain. Our body and mind, especially our brain is very plastic. Our brain moves, changes from one week to another. So our body, mind, and brain changes and evolve to match our environment. So let's say my environment is the Alps, where there's not a lot of oxygen. My body will adapt so I can survive with less oxygen, meaning my blood will circulate better. If I go in somewhere with a lot of sun, I will get tan because my body will adapt. And the brain adapts the same way. So a lot of people say, oh, Alex Honnold is doing these things because his brain is like this. What I think, and I truly think this, I think it's it's the opposite. It's the literal opposite. He does these things, so his brains adapt to create a better environment for him to keep doing free solo. So a lot of people, say, oh, it's crazy. His brain, he's literally built different. Like his brain is built different. No, I think he has the same brain as everyone. Of course, it's not exactly the same. I think he's autistic as well, but he has a regular brain, not an alien brain. But he puts himself in an environment very hostile that will forces him to not feel fear and to block his fear. Thus, his brain will adapt. I think this is the correct way. But of course, it's less impressive. So I don't think they really wanted to mention this in the movie. But it's less impressive. But it's way more interesting to also view life like this. But yeah, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's literally built different. Like he was born without a part of his brain. But I don't think that's the case. I think he was born with a regular brain. He has done 20 years plus of free soloing. So of course his amygdala in his brain adapted to this kind of effort. The same way that I think it's fighters, people who do like MMA and boxing and stuff like that. I think they have like a part of their brain that stops also working about the reflex, so they don't close their eyes. Same kind of stuff, But that's only my opinion, I'm only assuming, of course.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a more exciting way to look at it because you open the avenue for more people to be able to do that. And so when you look at your climbing in comparison to something like that, again, I'm going to make a lot of connections because it's like the best thing I have a grasp on. And I'm a big fan of climbing. I love climbing. I can't do it as much, but I have my 10-meter experience to kind of connect with you also. But when you look at Alex and what he did, similar to stuff that I do on 10-meter, he's journaling like every little piece before he goes and does such a dangerous move. Similar to me, when I'm on 10-meter, I try to like work out all of my thoughts between an arm pattern, circling, when I should be kicking out, what am I seeing as I'm flipping. Do you feel like you have similar steps to, hey, I'm looking at the Burj Khalifa, I'm about to climb this, what are the things that I need to do to make sure that I can stay, calm, composed, and X, Y, and Z when it comes to technique? Do you feel like you have similar things?
Well, for the Burj Khalifa, we had ropes and we climbed we didn't know exactly what to expect. But for other climbs, I like to know exactly what my challenge is going to be. And this is a really nice way of doing free solo, which is also what Alex Honnold does. I don't think he did a lot of on-site or any on-site free solo, but I may be wrong. This is not even assuming. I don't think he did. But actually, most climbers, first of all, there's not a lot of free solo climbers, but most of the free solo climbers, they don't do on-site free solo. The difference is that if you do an on-site free solo, you climb something, you know the grade, like how hard it's going to be, but you don't know how you're going to climb it. You just start climbing it and figure out on your way up, which is of course really dangerous because, let's say this climb is easy grade. Okay, it's easy, but halfway up there's a movement I cannot do because I'm too short. That's dangerous if you're doing that free solo, and that's how Alain Robert, the French Spider-Man, lived his life for years. He was climbing free solo on site, hard grades, which is completely nuts. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's irrational. Doesn't make any sense, but it's beautiful. But yeah, I think Alex Honnold, like most free solo athletes, they plan what they're gonna climb free solo, and if they climb something free solo, they have done it like 1,000 times with the rope. And I'm more fitting into this mindset of planning everything. Even though I like the excitement of sometimes not knowing exactly how I'm gonna pass a certain level of urban climbing, and I'm gonna have to figure out while I go up. So I understand both mindset, but I definitely feel safer with the second one. And almost all of the free solo athletes in the world, they repeat like 1,000 times the route they're gonna do free solo before they actually do it free solo.
Yeah. Yeah. So then it's when you come into a training session, or like when you picture, hey, I'm going to climb this building. Do you have a similar kind of training regimen that he does, to where it's like you figure out what type of crimps, jugs, whatever type of holds you're working on, and then you just go hammer that out for a month or a year, and then you go proceed and do the project? Or how do you do that? Do you like test climb the building?
That's the way he trained for Freerider, which was I think the right word is epitome. Like the epitome is the best. Is that the right word? Epitome.
Like the epitome of...
Epitome, yes. I mean,
Okay.
it was his bigger project.
Yeah.
His best project. Climbing Freerider on El Capitan was something I don't think anybody was expecting this to happen. So yeah, because it's a really incredible climb. So he has been doing this climb for I don't know how many years before he actually did it free solo, but that's because it's a really famous climb. He was probably like doing it for fun even before considering doing it free solo. He was probably already climbing like a lot of times because it's a really famous route. For now, I don't have this level of having one climb that I'm gonna train for years, especially because in urban climbing, usually once you get the technique, it's pretty much the same all the way up. So you don't need to have like a really specific training, but I do have a specific training for each climb that I do, because I want to make sure that I'm gonna be able to do it. But that usually means I'm gonna go at night on the ground, like on the buildings, and just go up and down a few levels and see how my body reacts, how hard it is, if I can rest, maybe try to find a new technique. And once I'm ready, I'm just ready. I'm gonna do it. But one day, if I do free solo on rocks, of course there's a chance that I might work on some routes for years and years before I even think about doing them free solo.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting, because I'm trying to form an image of how you look at a building. Okay, now I got to train for this. I have to do these steps, which those make sense. The mental, the somewhat physical, and then now I'm like sitting here. I was even thinking about this before the podcast. I was like, the legal side. Have you been arrested, or like what do these things look like? Unless you like talk to the building and get all these, what does that look like?
My lawyer says I cannot respond these questions. Nah, I'm kidding. Yeah, I always get arrested.
Every time. Oh my God, that's crazy.
But it's in France. The cop, they are really nice with me, because they say usually if it's me, it's okay, because they know me, I know them. I'm always behind the bars and they're on the other side. But it's okay. We can speak normally. They like what I'm doing, and they know that I'm training for this, training really hard. I mean, like the vast majority of my training, actually, like 99% of my training is regular training for climbing in a gym. But I have this 1% of training where I do specific training, but that's only when I have a goal in mind. And yeah, like I said before, let's say I want to climb this building, I'm gonna do like 1 or 2 training. But if I see that I have it in me, then I have it in me. There's no point in repeating like 100 times the same movement over and over again, like I don't know, until like for years. If I know I have it, I know I have it. But let's say a building is too hard for me to climb, then I don't really consider this training for later. I just think of myself, all right, I'm not good enough for now, so I'm gonna go back to training, and maybe in 5 years I'm gonna climb it. But I would not consider this time lapse of 5 years training a specific training. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so just to keep kind of building this out in my mind. So you will sneak to the building and start climbing. This has to begin early in the morning, late at night. Does that kind of change how climbing looks like if it's too kind of cold and there's condensation?
Well, when I do specific training, which is not often, I've been injured for a year now, but I haven't been doing it for a year and a half almost. I usually go at night to not have any problem with security.
Yeah.
Sometimes this will end up in me sprinting away from the building. But when I go for the climb, usually it doesn't matter when it is, because as soon as I start climbing, I know I mean I have nothing else but just to finish and make it alive to the top. So
Yeah.
there's nothing else in my head,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then this will be the last question on the legal side, but you finish the climb, you come down and you're just like, okay, that's fine. Lock me up. Like I know it's going to happen, and then rinse and repeat.
Yeah. Well, usually we take a selfie before because they want their selfie. But after the selfie, I go in the police car and I go to jail. But again, it's chill. I mean, they know me for 3 years now, so it's fine
Yeah. Okay.
for now.
Funny. So the other piece I wanted to touch on is, and this is going to crack my teammate up, because I had a long, way too long of a discussion when it came to focus. And I feel like you probably take focus to another level. Like on 10 meter, right? I'm high up. I can get hurt and fall off, but I'm hitting water. Like I can only get so hurt. Like there's been, I think, like 2-3 deaths in diving total. And it was from hitting the platform. Like that was so it's very uncommon. But when you're on 10 meter, you kind of notice these horse blinders. Everything kind of gets a little bit quiet.
Yeah.
But there's times to where if you're not paying attention, little things can distract you. And you've brought this up a few times though, is once you start, like your brain locks in. If I don't do this properly, I'm dead. And so you really have to have a different level of focus. Was there scenarios to where you noticed that like your mind upgraded somehow? You got better at this focus.
Yeah. A lot of times, what you say is really means a lot. It resonates in me. I definitely feel what you're talking about. Before a climb, I am really stressed. I'm not myself, but I get this, like what you say, like tunnel vision. So my vision will get smaller. Like literally, I will not see what goes on the sides of my vision, and I will be so focused that I don't really hear people talking to me or sounds or stuff like that. It's a mix of anxiety and focus. It's a weird mix. When I start climbing, I still have this, but it's slowly getting better. But it's sometimes hard to start climbing because, like, let's say if I'm on 10 meters, if I look down, I will see the ground. I will see the ground, and I can imagine what it's like to fall. If I fall, I don't die. Something probably worse would happen. In my opinion, of course, but it's bad. Like you don't climbing and being like 10 meters off the ground. It's bad. It's really scary. Once I pass like 15-20 meters, it's much better. I don't really see the ground clearly. My brain knows that I'm climbing. It understands well that it's not in between, something in between the climb and just being on the ground. So everything is easier, and my brain knows also that the only thing left to do is to do everything rationally and to stay focused and to do what I got to do to survive. Basically, I have no escape, so my whole mind is moving towards the goal. which is not the case when I'm starting to climb. I could still back down if I wanted to, so it's a really tough moment. Same before the climb, it's a really tough moment. But when I climb, I think I am less focused than before the climb. Like the 5 minutes before the climb or the 10 first meters, I would be more focused. But when I climb, it's more like I'm relaxed. I'm in a flow state, almost as if I'm watching myself do it. You know, I'm like in a flow state, but I will not call it a hyper focus mode because I can still feel the seconds. Seconds after seconds, I can still feel the time flowing. But I sometimes have to switch from this flow state to like a hyper focus mode. If let's say a part of the climb is different or something unexpected happens, I need to switch from a absolute focus mode. Like that's what you're referring to before. Absolute focus, and I don't even. I have like zero parts of my brain that is thinking about something else than climbing. I don't see the seconds, the time going. It's only the perfect action, the perfect movements. It's this or or the fall, a lot of meters down, 100 meters down. So that happened, not too much because usually buildings are pretty much always the same technique from the ground to all the way up. But it happened to me once in the Crystal Tower. I had to finish the climb using a really sketchy movement that I was not even able to train beforehand. So I was like, all right, I don't know exactly how I'm going to do this, but I got to do it perfectly. And I did it. And even though it's not hard per se, it's like doing this when you're just improvising and you don't know how you're going to do it, but you do this kind of movement where I had to put like my hands where my feet are and push everything, trying to not lose balance. It's something, it made me switch immediately from being chill to just hyper focus mode.
Yeah. It's funny, you touched on something that I've been trying to like identify within diving, and I feel like most people don't understand this mindset that maybe I'm going to connect myself to you for now, but it's very different since I most likely can't die doing what I do. But there's this moment of like it's maybe I'll call it a no option mindset. At one point for you, like you said, around like 15, 20 meters, you have no option. You have no option but to keep going up. And so like when I'm diving during a practice, right, it's not as intense. Like I can just walk off the platform and go, I don't want to do this today. But when I'm competing, there's a no option. Like I have no option other than to go. And at some point, it's liberating. It almost makes it easier having if you have no option other than to move forward, it kind of makes it easier. And obviously mine's not like, hey, you're going to die if you don't keep moving forward, but it's like your journey's done if you don't keep moving forward. So I kind of feel like I have that. There's just no option other than to go. And like I've had points within my career to where I've been so afraid of doing this dive that I'm like, you get that like tunnel vision where you start getting dizzy and kind of like feeling like you're leaning forward. I've had positions to where I feel like I literally can't do this. But right as I get into a competition, it's gone. It's gone because there's just no option. Do you kind of feel like you hit that?
That's how you see that you're a good competitor.
And do you think do you kind of connect with that? Because at some point, right, you had to do a new move. So again, you get to a new part, it challenges you. You have no option other than to adapt and be as perfect as you can, or you die. Do you feel like you connect with that mindset?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean that's definitely something we share, and we probably share this also. I think fighters also share this kind of mindset. Let's say they're being filmed, they have like the belt. I don't know, like they want to keep their belt. They have no option but to smash the dude in front of them. So it's same thing. And when your brain have no option, every single cell of your brain is gonna be like going towards what you want to do, like towards your goal. It's easier. I think Sun Tzu in The Art of War said that when you want to conquer a castle, you must never be all around the castle, because the people inside will have no other option but to fight until they die, and they will be much more efficient. What he suggests is actually leaving a small exit to create anarchy, to create irrationality. So I think it is probably like something you find in a lot of places, when you have no option, when when you have only one action that can save you, all of a sudden you do it perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a special feeling because I feel like I wish I could connect certain sports to like really get this feeling, and maybe they can be connected and I just don't understand it, but like golf, for example, just a random sport. No one attack me for saying this, but like there's no fear of like death. Like, I'm saying on 10 meter, I'm like, if I mess this up, like there's a huge consequence that could come from this. Obviously, if you mess up, which is 10 times, a million times bigger than mine, you die. And so you have this fear while you're going. And I feel like at some point, for me at least, you start to like get lightly addicted to it. So I took like a 4-month sabbatical, we'll call it, this fake retirement. And when I was done, I found climbing. And I got really obsessed with climbing because there were certain movements, like if I was in a cave or something that was like very overhung, and I'm really pumped out and I have to make a move, and like I could fall onto my back from like 10 feet, I started to feel that fear again. And I was like, oh, this is what I've been missing. Do you feel like once you started free soloing, you kind of had that taste and you're like, okay, I have to keep doing this consistently. Like it's not the same if my life isn't the same unless I get to do this consistently.
Well, it's the thing is that although I love this feeling, I don't like not controlling what happens. So I don't like, for example, doing highball. Highball in climbing is when you climb a boulder, so you have no safety rope, nothing, but it's really high. It sometimes can be as high as a climbing route. I don't like this because when you climb, I need to know if, like, I don't want to fall. If there's a chance I might fall. If there's no chance that I could fall, then I can do it absolutely. You know what I mean? Like if I know that if I know that the only thing I have to do is do the things correctly, then I'm free in my mind. But if I know that there's a chance that I might fall, no, I don't like this. This is why I don't like highballs. So what you are referring to, actually, I don't really like it. I don't enjoy it, but I like when I'm the only one in charge, when I know I can save my life with my own skill, if I'm doing everything correctly. That's what I enjoy.
Interesting. That's funny because like even to an extent though, right? Like you're walking up and you have to fight your mind until you start climbing, right? And so there's like a pushback from your mind at some point. And so it's like you keep coming back to that even though, you have control over these climbs. Is the pushback just from nerves of doing the climb? Would you say? It's a
good question. I don't know, actually. I don't know. I think it's because I think there's nothing rational and logic about climbing a skyscraper and putting yourself in danger. There's nothing rational about that. We didn't evolve to put ourselves in danger. I mean, it's natural selection. The only people left alive are the ones who are afraid of danger. That's what's rational. And I consider myself a rational person most of the times when I'm not climbing a skyscraper. But this is why, like, I'm really scared when I'm doing this. There's like real danger. But once I pushed this limit, once I pushed this, not nice moment, this horrible moment, the rational part of me says, hey, now you're gonna have to climb to survive. So all of a sudden, my mind and my goals are aligned. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. Okay, so then speaking on rationality, when you have your family hearing about what you're doing, or they ask about what you're doing, or they see pictures or photos of what you're doing, what was the initial reaction?
Uh, well, there was no initial reaction because uh, it came gradually. You know what I mean?
Mm,
So it's not like one of the day. One day I told them, "Hey, I'm gonna climb this skyscraper free solo." Yeah, no. So because I started parkour, well, first of all, I started climbing when I was really young, when I was 8 years old. So they always saw me climbing. They always saw the need of climbing that was in me. So they always understood this part of me. Then I started parkour when I was 17. So they quickly understood that there was maybe something with taking risks and dealing with risks, and most importantly, dealing with emotions in order to not let the risks attain me. Um, so after that, they saw my interest in urban climbing, which they quickly understood that it was linked to my childhood because climbing skyscraper was my dream as a child. My dad knew this really quickly. Um, so they gradually everything came up to this conclusion of free soloing skyscraper, both in my life but also in their mind because they saw me growing up. So it was there was not really a shock for them. I think there was maybe a shock when I climbed the Montparnasse Tower for the first time, or maybe the skyscraper just before this one. In 2021, when I started to really think, hey, I like this. I'm gonna really try to take this to the next level. For me, of course, I'm gonna try to really push my limits. And they saw like this, like in the newspaper and stuff like that, and they were pretty shocked. But they, I mean, it was not that big of a surprise for them. They saw me growing up and being interested in dealing with risks when I was growing up. So
yeah. Have they ever raised any concern? I mean, especially if you keep pushing the marker in the ballot of how hard these skyscrapers get. Do they bring
well,
anything up, or are they okay with it?
yeah, of course they are stressed for me, of course, and that's the one thing I regret about what I'm doing is being making my family scared. But the good thing is the more I'm doing this, the less scared they are because when I was doing this for the first time, they were like, all right, maybe there's like one chance out of two, 50-50 that my son will die. So that was pretty tough. But after I succeed once, twice, three times, four times, 5 times, 10 times, now they're like, all right, so he made it 10 times. Maybe it's not out of luck. Maybe there's a reason he survived 10 times. So now it's getting easier because they see that I keep succeeding. So they understand that I'm not just crazy. Because if I was crazy, I would not have survived 10 times.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, when it comes to then moments, you said you had to change a technique towards the end of a climb. Do you train yourself to be kind of ready for moments like that? Let it be in the climbing gym, and you try to not surprise yourself, but kind of like flash certain things that are harder just to keep the mind ready for something
Not
like that?
really.
No?
The only way I train is physically. I train physically climbing. Actually, I should train flash. I never train flash. I never do it. I should train that for sure. But I train physically in the gym, and I think if physically I'm getting better and I can smash this goal, and this goal, the more I'm gonna have small goals and slowly building into higher goals, the easier it's going to be to reach those higher goals. I think the mind thing isn't. The mind thing is always related to the physical aptitudes, skills. So I don't really train my mind like I don't know, like doing yoga or stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I climb harder and harder stuff, and every time I'm less scared of doing it
Yeah.
because, yeah, I mean, like every 5 months or 6 months, I'm climbing something new, and my mind adapts.
Yeah. And so at
I
what
think
point
that's
did
what happens.
yeah. At what point did you know for the first time, hey, I'm ready to free solo climb one of these buildings? Was there like a V grade that you hit? Was there a certain like strength marker that you were looking for? Let it be a one arm pull up with, 14 people hanging off of you. What was the moment to where you knew?
Um, it was when I think I was 18 years old. Um, I free soloed my first skyscraper, which is really easy. When I say it's easy, it's really easy. Like there's a lot of non-climber who have done it,
Hmm.
so it's really really easy climb. But at this moment in life, there was only one person who had done it before, so I was still pretty anxious. Actually, I was really anxious, but at the same time, I knew like I was overly capable of doing this. And when I say I was overly capable of doing this, um, I'm not saying I was skilled. I was not skilled. Just the climb was just super easy.
Hmm.
So it was not me that was good. It's just the climb was super easy. So I knew I was good enough for this. It took a lot of time for me to prepare and accept. I think accept the the fact of putting my life on the line. That what takes took the most time.
Okay.
It definitely took years because I wanted to climb this building since I was like, what, I don't know, 7, 8 years old. So it took 10 years to just accept to try it out for real. And yeah, one day I was tired of dreaming and not doing it. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna try to do it. Enough dreaming. Now it's time for action.
Yeah, that's sweet. So if you were to take someone, if someone was going to come up to you and say, "Hey, I would love to join you on one of your harder free solo climbs," what would be then, take out the mind, what would be the physical traits you'd be looking for?
The physical traits would be um, aerobic um, skills of climbing and lactic anaerobic skills of climbing. So anything except strength and how I don't know how to say English. Um, being
So you're looking
explosive, you know,
Okay. Yeah, so like
being
would top rope.
dynamic explosive. What is it?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So would someone being like very good at like lead climbing or top rope be
Yeah,
more relative to what you do?
yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the kind of effort I'm training in the gym. Basically, I have a huge tunnel, like a huge boulder tunnel that is like 8 meters long. So I do it back and forth, 8 meters, 8 meters, 8 meters, 8 meters, and I try to like go for like 15, 20, 25 minutes. It depends on the difficulty. If the difficulty is higher, of course, it's going to be more like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. But yeah, I think it's definitely not bouldering, but it depends again because some buildings are have pretty good rests on the climbs, like the Montparnasse Tower. You could really let go one hand pretty good, so I could bring a boulder for this climb because it's not really resistance. It's more we call it conti in French, meaning you do an effort, then you take a break, then you do another effort, and you take a break. So yeah, it's closer to this kind of effort.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so it's you have to be able to maintain composure for a long time. You have to be able to make sure that you can just deal with the lactic acid buildup.
Yeah.
Um, does do a lot of these buildings, is it just pure crimp strength, or are you actually doing a lot of pinching, compressing?
It depends. Some buildings are like cracks, like
Mm,
this. And you
okay.
jam your fingers in it. And usually you have like a few, like you can still, like you hold the thing like this. This would be how I hold the holds on skyscrapers. Um, I'm gonna try to have an example. I don't know. Here's my phone.
Yeah.
Oh. Here's my phone. I would be doing like this,
Okay.
having my hands like this and moving it like this or like this.
So it's like an open
So
crimp.
sometimes you have pretty good holes. Sometimes it's smaller. But it's usually like this. Sometimes you have two rails and you're climbing with your foot on the on both sides. Sometimes you have just one crack that goes all the way up. Sometimes you have a rest. Sometimes you don't have a rest. The thing with urban climbing is that a small details can change the whole climb. It can go from easy climb to impossible, like really quickly, like this. If there's like, I don't know, like a 1 centimeter ledge every 5 meters, it can be super easy. But if you take off this 5 centimeters ledge, you can have to do the whole thing, full resistance training, full resistance climbing, like non-stop, 200 meters, and that will be much harder. And it's actually not even, it's harder, but it's more importantly, it's not the same kind of effort. It's not the same kinds of muscle fibers that will be used.
Yeah.
It's I don't know enough about this topic, but it's not the same kind of we call it reservoir energetic, like energetic.
Your energy
stuff.
systems that you're working with, is that kind
exactly.
of because you got the aerobic, anaerobic. Yeah.
It's small details can change everything.
Yeah, that makes sense. One thing I did want to jump back to, because it just hit me while we were talking about that. I saw a video that you posted, and it was videos of other people filming you while you climbed up. Now, we talked about the focus of you climbing and scaling these buildings, but when you have some people on both sides of what you're doing, especially on the indoor side, has that ever been fairly distracting to you, especially when like your point of view goes through?
Not really, because when I'm climbing, sometimes I wave at people and I get distracted. But if I get distracted, it means it's okay for me to be distracted.
Okay.
If I'm waving people, it means it's okay for me to wave people. If I really need full focus mode, I will not see those people behind the windows. So it's not a problem.
Okay. Yeah, I was just like,
now, it's not a problem.
yeah, because I'm picturing like for diving, right? We like to just have nothing in our view, and so if someone's standing directly in front of me staring at me, it's really just it can be distracting. Even if you're on a dive that frightens you, you're kind of like, it feels awkward. And so I didn't know if you had the same feeling of while you're climbing, you have all of these people filming you, freaking out, screaming, that it was just like an annoying.
I mean, it's weird sometimes, but I'm getting used to it. The thing is that there's some buildings that are really hard, and I'm not gonna want people to film me and making noise. But lucky for me, those really hard buildings, there's no way of being distracted. Technically, there's no windows or stuff like that. So yeah, it's for now, it's only fun.
Yeah, that's good. So then, also jumping back to when you look at the idea of death, you kind of have to first walk into the idea of how someone lives, right? Because death is just the end point, but you're taking out the equation of, well, what am I doing while I'm living? And so when you look at free solo climbing, when you look at sports that are just like that have high mortality rates, then you start looking at the athletes a little bit differently. And so like my view on it is, especially if you talked about like Alex Honnold, right? He felt like I need to do this. I don't feel like I'm living if I don't get to experience these moments. Do you ever feel like that is kind of how you view this? Like this is such a transcending moment for you, almost like spiritual, to put yourself in a position like that you have to do it.
I've been doing a lot of self-analysis to try to understand, like as I said, on a psychological level, why I'm doing this. Because I understand, if I understand who I am, I will also understand my actions. And this gave me a lot of answers. I'm not gonna bore you with too much self-analysis, but yeah, basically, I like when I control everything. I'm scared of death when I cannot do anything about it, or when I cannot see it coming. I'm a type of guy, when I get my blood taken, I want to look at the needle going inside my arm. And when I look at the needle going inside my arm, I am okay. If I look away, I'm not okay. So yeah, this is basically when you like take a look of my at my psychological analysis. Uh, Doing free solo is basically like the logical endpoint. You know, it's
Mm.
yeah, because this is also like it's when I try to get to know myself on a psychological level, I understand why I'm comfortable with free soloing basically. So that's one part of saying this is what I need to do in life. It's also because it fits who I am. Like everything in life, I mean, we all do things that fits who we are, but it's always interesting to know why. Um, but yeah, on a more um, like achievements level, this is what I want not only to experience, but this is what I want to achieve also. This is what interests me in life, and yeah, the feeling you get when you do a free solo, when you control everything that you do, it's unmatched. I totally understand what Alex Landot says. Obviously, I'm not what I'm doing is not as near as impressive or as skilled as he does, of course, but I still kind of understand what he meant by what you experience. It's something that is completely unique, and it's really hard to describe. It's yeah, it's you get in a mental state that you don't go otherwise. Um, yeah, just you climb, but you have no rope. You just have to climb and reach the top. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring this up consistently. You keep saying it too. Is when you start psychologically analyzing your brain, and I feel like we only are able to do a very like good vetting of our brain until we're challenged to do so. And so lacking the challenge, when you're comfortable, when you're far too comfortable, you can't really look into your mind. It's kind of like a David Goggins thing. I don't know if you know who that is, but like
Yeah,
you have to put yourself through shit to understand who you are as a person. Do you feel like
yes, true.
so you kind of you agree with the fact that, and maybe this is when you first started free soloing, and I'd be interested to see when this actually happened, but when you really started challenging yourself, it was a lot easier to know who you actually were.
Hmm. Well, I would say in my case, it is probably more the opposite. I mean,
Mm.
I started doing what I loved to do, what I not only what I wanted to experience, but also what I felt right to do. And after a while, I started to think, there's more than just getting feelings. That there's something on a psychological level. And my girlfriend is a psychologist, so that helps.
Oh, perfect.
But it's and this is not, I'm talking about myself, but this applies for everybody in life. When you understand who you are psychologically on a psychological level, you start to understand every single one of your actions, and there's no better weapon than knowing yourself. When you know yourself, you know exactly why you react this way, why you act this way, why you think this way. It's really a powerful weapon, and I think it's really important for me to understand not only what good I get from free soloing, like the experience, the uniqueness that you get, but also why I'm attracted to this. Because yeah, I mean it's always good to know yourself in the future, for future, even for future climbs, to know not only like why I'm doing this, but also how I'm going to react to that in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. It's again, I connect myself. It's people always ask me like, "Oh, you look so comfortable up there. You look so confident. Like, how are you able to, really like build that confidence?" And I always tell them every single time, I'm terrified. I'm horrified of 10 meters. It's terrifying. Even when I walk up there, I struggle to look off the edge sometimes, and I always try to. Oh, well, I got to lean off the edge because, it's like in psychology, you want to like microdose that fear so you can become less fearful of that thing. You're desensitizing. And so, I think one big thing, and I'm assuming it sounds like it's similar to you when you're fighting yourself when you first start walking towards a building, is it's not that you're not afraid, it's how you deal with the fear during the experience.
Yeah.
If you look at diving, there's 10-meter diving, and then there's Red Bull cliff diving, which is just 10,000 times scarier. And there's a guy named Andy Jones. He said a beautiful line to me, and I've always connected it to my diving and scary situations. He said, expect the fear. You know when you get afraid, so you need to start expecting it.
Yeah.
And that's when I was able to start making changes within my dives, because I figured out when I would get afraid of a moment. And it sounds like you kind of have the similar thing. You know when you first start walking up, you get afraid in those first 10, 15 meters. And so it's once you figure out where that is, it's how you address it and build. And I feel like those moments are where you really find out who you are, is what do you do during that fear? Do you crumble? If you crumble, good, because then you can learn and build from that. And then if you don't, it's like boosting that confidence. I'm always afraid, but it's how I react during the fear that it's like it's a personality builder. And it's just like extra points. It's like a plus 10 every time on confidence.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. So I always found those concepts to be like very invigorating. So outside of your girlfriend, do you go out of your way to look into psychology or read books that kind of build your mind when you get into
No,
something like
I
this?
don't go that far. I don't go that far into it, but even just knowing yourself better and not only knowing yourself better, but understanding every situation. For example, before a climb, I am nervous, but I understand now why I am nervous. It's not because I am going to climb. It's because I am not climbing right now. I am stuck on the ground, and there is no actions that I can do to make me feel safer. So it's whereas when I start climbing, there's an action I can do in order to survive. So when I'm on the ground, it's like I'm stuck, and I can't do anything to save myself because I'm about to climb, but I have to wait. It's terrible. Whereas when I start climbing, everything is just easier. Like I said.
Yeah.
So I don't have much time left. I don't know if you have a lot of more topics to discuss.
Oh, I got one more question, and I can let you go. But just because I find it interesting, what was, especially when you're free solo climbing, what was kind of the closest to death for you moment, and how were you able to kind of like get out of that position?
Well, I have a very disappointing answer for you because I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of ways you can come closer to death, and I've never came pretty close to death for now. But there's a lot of ways that it's possible to do it. There's climbs that are just really hard, so you're getting closer to death because it's hard. Just unexpected situations. There's also expected situations, but you don't know how to do it, so you have to improvise. There's a lot of kind of situations. But I remember once I forgot my truck bag. I mean, my truck bag was upside down on my waist, so I had to like untie the knot, put my truck bag in the right position, and adjust it in my back and start climbing again. That was pretty intense. But did I came close to dying? No. I didn't came close to dying at any seconds. I just did everything correctly and just kept climbing, So I wouldn't say that I came close to death at this moment. No more than in the rest of the climb, actually.
Okay. And so it's like per climb, you feel very comfortable. You go into it, and even if you feel like there's a sketchy position, you're usually mentally prepared to where it's not usually a problem.
Well, the mindset is always the same. It's focus and no emotion. So I could be this close to dying unless I know for sure I'm gonna die, and then there's nothing else to do but, I don't know, think about my loved ones or panic maybe if I'm being a bitch. but otherwise the mindset will stay the same. If I have a chance to survive, I will not let my emotions get the best of me.
Yeah. Well, I love it. Hey, well, it was an absolute honor having you on the podcast, and hopefully
Thanks.
People were able to pull quite a bit from this. I know it seems like we ended up talking about the mind about the entire time, but I think that's the most important part. So thank you for joining. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you a lot for inviting me. It's been an honor as well. Yeah, I had a great time, so thank you very much.
Sweet.
And sorry for being late last time.
Oh, not a problem. All right, well, people, will catch you next week. Thank you for listening. Peace.